Hi, reading friends. Welcome back. We are in lesson 5 today, and it's called Keeping Tabs on Comprehension. So now, not just us reading our story and trying to put chunks together and sound out the words, but also making sure that we understand what we're reading. Who is the story about? Where are they? Like we talked about on day 1 this week. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. I'm going to add to your Google Classroom a link to Brain Pop Junior, which is about sequencing. So, sequencing is when you take a story and you decide what happened first in the story, then what happened next, like you're doing a retelling. So, first in the story, this happened, and next in the story, this happened. Sometimes, maybe in kindergarten, you might have done it with pictures. So, you put the pictures in the correct order to show the sequence. So, that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, is making sure we understand what happened at the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, the end of the story. So our learning target is, as a reader, I can listen to myself read so I can retell what is happening in the story. I will know I have it when I can put the events of a story in the correct order. What happened first, next, and last. So faster isn't always better. So raise your hand if you think you're reading a little bit faster today than you read on Monday when we first started. Okay? Raise your hand if you're reading somewhat faster, but you're still having to stop and sound out some words. Actually, that's probably all of us, right? Today, I want to teach you something very important so that you understand that faster isn't always better. So last night, as I was reflecting on my day, I started to get a little worried because I felt like yesterday, even though we were scooping words and we were talking about sight words and we were putting those together, I felt like I left you thinking that maybe reading faster is better. And I don't want you to have that thinking. I don't want you to think that you have to read super fast. Because sometimes when you're reading very fast, you're just spitting out the words and you're not thinking about what you need to read. And so I jumped up out of bed and I ran and I grabbed a Post-it note. And actually, these are my handy dandy Post-it notes that Kylie sent me for a back to school little gift. But I wrote on a Post-it note and I said, readers need to be careful not to get going and reading faster and faster and forget to think about the story. And I wanted to put this note down because I wanted to remember to tell you that today. I don't want you to think Mrs. Steck thinks that you should be reading as fast as you can. I am not saying that. I also wrote on here to tell you that readers keep tabs by stopping to make sure that they can retell the events in order. So a way to check yourself to see if you're listening and understanding what's happening is after each page or two, you stop and think. And that is what we're talking about on our next slide. That is a thinking strategy. So one of the thinking strategies is called monitoring. And monitoring is when I pause and I think for just a minute, who is in the story? What is happening? Where are they? All of those things that we started to learn this week. Also, monitoring means that you might reread and reflect. So if you have stopped at the end of a 2-page book and you're asking yourself what just happened and you're like, I have no idea, then good readers reread. They go back, they look at the pictures, they reread, and they're like, okay, now I'm focused. I know who the characters are. I know what's happening. Sometimes even adults, especially Mrs. Steck, has to go back and reread. I might be reading something for school from Mr. Spiker, from Miss Little, and I might have some extra noise going on and I'm really trying to focus, but I get to the end of the page, I'm like, I have no idea what I just read. So I have to go back and refocus and maybe move to a spot where it's quiet, maybe put some headphones just to block out the noise. But that's what good readers do. So I don't want you to think, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I don't know what I just read. Sometimes we just get distracted. We might start thinking about something else, and we have to bring ourselves back. Like, okay, right now I got to focus on this 5 minutes of reading. And that's okay. That's normal. If you asked who you live with, your guardian, your parent, your grandma, your grandpa, your aunt, if you ask them, sometimes do you read? Do you ever not know what you're reading? They're going to say yes, even as an adult. Sometimes they don't know what's happening. So today I want to talk to you about pausing and thinking. So the first thing I do is I just put my hand up on pause and I think. I pause and I think. So that means stop after each page or each couple of pages and ask yourself what happened in the story. Then, if you're not sure, go right then and reread those pages. Don't wait till you get to the end of the book and try to figure out what you read. Do that pause and think as you're going through the story. Then you need to ask yourself what happened first in the story. Then what happened? Then what happened? It's like you're telling someone a story. So I heard this story today, and this man was standing on the side of the road and he was holding up a sign. Yay, teachers, we love you. So you're doing a sequence of what is actually happening, and that's what you want to be able to do at the end of your story. So today, I want to do a little bit of guided practice with you, and I want to do just a stop and think so you can see what that looks like. This is my time to just kind of show you and for us to kind of work through it together. So with the guided practice, I'm going to be reading Just Lost, and I'm going to do a think aloud with Just Lost. And then I'm going to walk you through the steps of how you can do this with your book from your book baggie. So the first thing I notice on the front is Just Lost is that little critter right here has this shocked kind of scary look on his face. So I'm assuming probably that he is the one that is going to get lost in our story. Remember also I said good readers stop and kind of just take a picture walk and look at what is going on before I even read. And so when I'm looking at this, I notice that mom has a stroller. She's got the baby with her, and there are lots of people. I also know by looking at this picture that little critter is going to stop and he is going to tie his shoe. So I bet that's going to be important. In fact, I can even probably predict that that's why he gets lost, is because he stops in the middle of the crowd. Now, I just noticed on this page, if you can see it, there's a Toy Story store there. So they're probably at the mall. I can infer from the picture that's where they are. So I'm looking through and I see maybe they're at the mall. Let's go ahead and start, and I want to kind of think through this with you so you can see what you're going to do when you do some practice on your own. Mom took us shopping at the mall. There were a jillion critters in there. So I've been to the mall when it's been really, really busy, and I've been to the mall lately when there is nobody there. But in this picture, there is a lot of critters. I wanted to push my brother's stroller, but the mall was just too crowded. So mom pushed him instead. So I know my characters are little critter and baby and mom, and then all these other people that are at the mall. I know that where they're at the mall. The next page says there was such a big crowd that I could barely see anything. Mom said, stay close by me so you won't get lost. When we were right in the middle of the crowd, I noticed that my shoe was untied. I tied it so I wouldn't trip. So now I noticed that there in the middle of the mall, little critter stops to tie his shoe. And I can predict what's going to happen. I know you can too. He's going to get up and mom's going to be gone, right? When I stood up, I couldn't find mom. I climbed up on the bench to look around. Mom! I yelled, but it was so noisy no one could hear me. My mom was lost in the mall. I wanted to cry, but I was brave. I didn't know what to do, so I went straight into the store, and it was a toy store. The store clerk said, "May I help you?" And I said, "Yes, my mom is lost." She said, "Don't worry, we'll go find her for you." She called a security guard on the store phone. So already I know that little critter and his mom, they're at the mall. I know that he stopped to tie his shoe. When he stood up, mom was nowhere around. She was lost because she didn't stay with little critter like she was supposed to. And so next, he goes into the toy store, goes up to the register, and he says, "Hey, my mom is lost." So now they've called the security guard. So my think aloud is reminding me about the order that things are happening from the beginning of the story to now. I can retell what is happening. The clerk let me play with some toys while we waited for the security guard to arrive. The security guard was wearing a uniform. He looked like a policeman. Look at that. "You can come to my office until you find your mom," he said. He let me wear his hat. So now he's going to the security guard's office. I felt really cool walking through the mall with this security guard. The security office was a small room. There were lots of TV sets showing everything on the mall. And our mall up in Florence has that too. They have a security office and it shows all these screens of everything going on. So if I pause and I think to myself, what happened after little critter went into the store? What happened when he told the lady that his mom was lost? After that, she called the security guard. The security guard came and said, "Hey, why don't you go with me to the office and hang out with me until we find out where your mom is?" So that's where we are right now in our story. I saw a little critter crying. I guess she didn't want to leave the toy store. And I don't know if you can see that picture. Can you see that? It's kind of tough to see, but she's holding on to this teddy bear and the mom's kind of pulling her off and she's screaming, "No, I don't want to let go of the teddy bear." I saw critters reading in a bookstore. I saw critters eating in the restaurant, but none of them could see me. It was like being a real spy. That's pretty cool. The security guard made an announcement. He said, "Little critter's mom, please, could you come to the security office to pick him up?" So there they are. Then he gave me a donut and some juice, and he let me look through the lost and found box of all the stuff that people had left. All of a sudden, I saw mom on one of the TV screens, and she was walking through the mall with another security guard. I said, "There she is. That's my mom." The office door opened, and mom and my brother and my sister all came in. I missed that sister was with them when I retold the beginning of the story, didn't I? I have to add that in. Sometimes we do that. We might miss a detail. Mom looked so worried. I guess she was just not as brave as I had been. "I was so worried," she said. I was really brave, but I didn't even cry. Then Mom smiled and said, "I'm very proud of you, little critter." I knew she was glad that I had found them. She's got her tissue. See her. The next time we go to the mall, I'm going to be really careful because Mom just hates getting lost in the mall. So, a very good story of Just Lost. And we can retell each part of that story. We can retell who the characters are. They are Mom, sister, baby brother, and little critter. They're in the mall. We know what happened. Little critter stopped to tie his shoe. And then when he got up, Mom was gone. He said Mom got lost. And he went into the toy store and told that to the lady that was there. They called the security officer. And the security officer came and said, "Hey, come hang out with me until we find your mom." So he goes into the security office and he sees all of these TVs and all of these cameras, and he can spy on all these people and they don't even know he's looking. And then all of a sudden he sees his mom and his sister and his brother coming their way, and they walk in and he's like, "That's my mom." And he said, "I was so brave," but apparently she wasn't brave because she was crying and she was all worried. But then at the end, when they were leaving, he said he was going to be really careful the next time because his mom really didn't want to get lost again. So that's how we sequence the story. That's how we stop and we look at the pictures and we talk about what happened first, what happened next. Today, you are going to be reading a passage that has a sequence of events. The title of your story is called "The Early Bird Catches the Worm." And you may have heard that before, that kind of saying, "The early bird catches the worm." And that just means that if you get up early, you get things done. But in this particular story, it means that the early bird who's flying overhead is going to catch that worm and eat it. But this worm is trying to be smarter than the bird. So you need to remember to stop and think, where does the worm hide? Where does he hide first? Where does he hide second? Where does he go at the end of the story? How does he get away, or how does he get eaten? You have to decide what happens in that story. So make sure you stop and ask yourself as you go, what is happening in the story? Today, we are increasing our reading time to 7 minutes of independent reading. That's reading your story by yourself in a really good spot. And it says on my screen 5 minutes, and then at the top it says 7 minutes because I made a mistake and forgot to change that. But I'd like for you, if you're doing good, if you read 5 minutes, if you read 6 minutes, if you're doing pretty good, I'd like for you to set your timer for 7 minutes today. Now, you can do "The Early Bird Gets the Worm" as part of your 7 minutes because you have to read that anyway. And then you can pull a book out of your book baggie to add to that 7 minutes. You can have that right close with you and set your timer. Now, remember, you have to be focused on your story. Okay, you can't be looking at other people, looking at what's going on. This is just you time just to read and see what's happening. Now, if one of the books in your book baggie that you've been reading, if you're getting really good at it and you did your independent practice and you still have some time left, remember there's a couple of other books in there that you can start. You can start reading and start looking at. It's okay to read a book more than once. In fact, it's really good to read a book more than once. So go ahead and start doing that. Don't forget to do your questions that's attached to your Google Classroom, and you're going to send that in to me, and it's going to be all about "The Early Bird Gets the Worm" passage. Okay. Today's lesson was a little bit longer, but I just wanted you to make sure that you're thinking about the story as you're reading it. If you have questions about today's lesson, feel free to jump on during our reading time, or one of the other times I can answer a question for you. Or if you want to send me a message, that's perfectly fine as well, so that we can check in together if you have questions. If you're doing great, keep plugging away, keep learning, keep reading and doing all of those things. And remember, today is Friday, so you have the weekend and an extra day off this coming weekend. So enjoy your break. If you don't have any questions or don't need to jump on for me, I will see you soon. Have a great day of learning.